All right, thank you guys for joining me tonight. So we are going to be discussing for a little bit the intercultural business customs and the differences between Chinese culture and the United States culture. So just a little brief introduction here. Many companies today are always promoting either their business or what they're trying to sell to the customers, which are going to be us. Countries also across the world are always searching for the next business opportunity, and it seems like different countries are wanting to get to the top so fast that they're taking each other down, which is something we read about in the news today. We watch it on the news as well, and so it just seems like it's a continuous cycle of who's going to get to the top first. So I want to talk about what it is about China's economy / business that makes it appealing to the U.S. to get involved with. So just to kind of get going here, American versus business culture. So in Van Thompson's article titled American versus Chinese Business Culture, Thompson talks a little bit about Chinese business people wanting to develop relationships with the people that they do interactions with, that they make transitions with. And while he says Americans are opposed to strong relationships, they value the transaction more than they do the people that they're doing the business with. So I find that very interesting, just because the Chinese hold so much honor and respect, and they care about the business, whereas maybe Americans only care about the dollar amount and not so much what they're getting. So just to do a little formal introduction here, when it comes to formal introductions and greetings, there's just a few things that U.S. managers are going to want to know before they head off to China. So the first thing is that the Chinese, when you're doing meetings with them, interactions, they may come off as a little informal, and they may come off a little uptight, but that's just because that's how they were raised and that's how they show their respect almost. And the next thing is that you always want to stand up when you're being introduced at a meeting, and you never want to sit down before your introduction is over. That would show disrespect to your hosting company, and that's just how the Chinese hold their meetings. So to keep going along with that, when being introduced to in Chinese business meetings, the accepted form of greeting is going to be a handshake. And that may seem a little odd just because it could be differently in China. They may have more of a professional manner, but it's just a handshake like the US. It could also be that they may bow in how they greet you. And that's sort of the same as the Japanese, but instead of bowing at the waist, the Chinese are going to bow at the shoulders for you. And also in Chinese culture, they like to be formally introduced. So they take pride in how they are met at meetings. So they want to be met in a more professional manner. So a little bit about the cultural differences as well. Some Chinese culture and U.S. culture expect different ways to be spoken to and be spoken to. For instance, you never want to call anybody in the Chinese culture comrade. That comes off as disrespectful and not honorable to who you're meeting with. Next, you never want to call someone by his or her first name. Also, you never want to call them by his or her last name. That comes off as disrespectful as well. So addressing someone by his or her professional name or their courtesy name is going to be more of a professional way that you want to address somebody you are in a Chinese meeting with. So talking a little bit about rules for proper business attire, there are several important things that you'll need to be aware of as far as dressing for a business meeting in China. One of the biggest things is that you want to make sure that you're not wearing bright colors. That is something that the Chinese don't really take part in. They feel like bright colors are going to be distracting to the meeting. So instead of wearing brighter colors, you want to try to wear more darker colors. That way you can take the focus off of you and put it more on what you are trying to convey in the meeting. Also, you want to always try to avoid wearing jeans. wearing jeans in a meeting is going to be more disrespectful, and they also don't have any casual days in China, it seems like. So even if it's Friday, you want to make sure that you're still wearing professional attire. That way you can look presentable in what you are trying to convey. And so just the conclusion here, we talked about a few things, and so I just want to review those. The first thing was we talked about American versus Chinese business culture. The second thing we talked about were the formal introductions and how those worked. The third thing was we talked about the cultural differences, how Chinese and the United States vary in different aspects. And the last thing we talked about was the proper cultural business attire for when you are presenting yourself in a meeting. So what I would like to take away from this is that China has a lot to offer economically for any kind of meeting, and I think that the U.S. can take some tips about how they do business there, and we can bring that here to help our economy out as well. So thank you very much.